Hey you fox-faced fancies! I will now be ranking the studio albums of legendary English progressive rock and pop band Genesis. Number 15 is Calling All Stations, the band's last album. It is an odd way to end the band's creative output. After Phil Collins left the band, they got Ray Wilson in on vocals. While this is a different overall vibe, it's not overly bad, mainly just misguided. The sound became a bit more moodier, which wasn't always Genesis's strong point. Some of the instrumentals are nice and Wilson does a good job carrying them, but it is a low point in their career. Number 14 is Abacab. The band switched from prog rock to a mixture of art rock, post-punk and pop to create some interesting results. Some good moments and others they would rather forget. The use of electronic drums is interesting but makes the album sound very dated. Number 13 is From Genesis to Revelations. The band's debut album. It was very much a product of its time. A mixture of psychedelic pop with folk and early traces of indie rock. It does have some good moments on it. While it was rushed together, there is some tuning issues but it gives it a bit of charm. Number 12 is their self-titled. The mistakes from Abacab are corrected on this one. While there are art rock elements, it mostly is the band moving into a more pop-orientated space. I feel that the band excel with more of a mix of these styles, but it's good for what it is, with some dated cringe moments too. Number 11 is And Then There Were Three. The first album with the band as a trio. It did see a musical shift for the band with further experiments into pop, but when it comes to the technical ability of the band, this houses some of their most complex material. Material-wise it isn't as strong but it's impressive nonetheless. Number 10 is Trespass. The first album showcasing their classic sound. It has a brilliant mix of pastoral beauty with early progressive aggression. Great musicianship and a powerful, captivating performance from Peter Gabriel. While the material isn't as strong as it will become, it's an amazing start. Number 9 is A Trick of the Tail. The band's first album without Peter Gabriel and the first with Phil Collins on vocals. Phil easily takes the role and kills it. One of their most technical musical albums. The instrumental moments on this album are perfection, showing that they could do it without Gabriel. The material isn't as strong but it does have some of the band's most classic moments. Number 8 is We Can't Dance. An album that is very much a mixed bag, but is held up by the weight of its fantastic material. Mostly disliked by most fans, I think it contains some of the band's best poppier moments along with some surprising prog playing on a mostly pop album. Very much taking what they did on Invisible Touch further, it proved that there was still a place for progressive rock in stadiums. Some material on it is rather cringe, but I've seen them at cringier moments in their career. Number 7 is Nursery Crime. The first album with the classic lineup and the first album featuring Steve Hackett and Phil Collins. It increased the band's technical and creative ability. As this was early days, it was still them in their early stages, but it does have moments of greatness that show the promise of what was to come. Number 6 is Invisible Touch. The band's most commercially successful album. It does a great job of mixing their pop sound with prog touches. When it comes to their poppier material, this is the best example of them hitting the mark the best, after struggling with their sound for most of the 80s. Very underlooked by fans as I think it holds some of their strongest material. Number 5 is The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. The last album to feature Peter Gabriel. He really went out with a bang by constructing one of the oddest and unique concept albums of the 70s. An absurdist psychoanalysis of oneness. You still can see its influence today. Musically the band went in a more experimental direction, but not losing their technical or melodic edge. Not their best in my opinion, but a serious landmark in music. Number 4 is Duke. The band's first album of the 80s, they burst into the decade with a strong new style. perfectly blending the style of prog with the sound of pop. It showed that fantastic musicianship could exist in the pop world with high-class songwriting. Anyone who wants to completely devoid the band of artistic merit during the decade need to give this a spin. It may change their mind. Number 3 is Foxtrot, the band's first proper classic album. It had them go full-blown prog on this one, using mellotrons, comical yet epic lyrics, over-the-top dramatics, and one side of the vinyl being an epic track. The band go all out on this one to show off each of their abilities to its fullest form, an emotional and powerful roller coaster of an album with very little fat to trim. Number 2 is Selling England by the Pound. If Foxtrot was their first full-blown prog album, then this album perfected it while adding a more solemn and artistic edge to it. Lyrically, it paints a brilliant morose satire of English modern myths, but not fully devoid of fun. Musically gorgeous and excelling, this is a classic album and fan favorite for many reasons. Truly, the band is at their peak at this point. The best Genesis album in my opinion is Wind and Wuthering. Personally, this is the album that hits everything that I like about the band all in one. Instead of the whole material being crafted by the band, each member brought in material, with major contributions by Tony Banks, who I see as the real heart and driving force of the band. Incredibly gorgeous compositions, ranging from full-blown romantic prog and their earliest pop material. It really showed the dynamics of the band with full force. Phil's vocals are at his most dynamic, covering a wide technical and emotional spectrum, their most underlooked album in their collection and of all time. Thanks for watching. Sadly, Exodus don't sound anything like Genesis. Recommend me another band to do this with, or else I'll kick you out of the ark when the flood comes.